The first time Vicky Okafor saw Park Jinho, he was crying in the rain outside her Lagos office building. Not the pretty, movie-style crying. Real, ugly sobbing, the kind that comes from somewhere deep and broken. He was sitting on the curb in an expensive suit that was now soaked through, his head in his hands, and he was speaking Korean so rapidly that even Vicky, who was fluent, could barely keep up. "I've lost everything," he kept saying. "Everything. It's all gone." Vicky had two choices: walk past this strange Korean man having a breakdown in the middle of Victoria Island, or stop and help. She chose wrong. Or maybe she chose right. Either way, that decision changed both their lives forever. Hold on, before we dive deeper into this incredible story, if you're new here, smash that subscribe button right now and turn on the notification bell so you never miss stories like this. This channel is all about real emotions, second chances, and love that defies expectations. Also, drop a comment below telling me where you're watching from and whether you've ever helped a complete stranger that changed your life. I read every single comment and I love connecting with you all. Now let's get back to Vicky and Jinho's story. Trust me, you won't believe where this goes. 3 hours earlier, Vicky was having the worst day of her professional life. She was 27 years old, the head translator at Johnson & Associates, one of Lagos's premier international law firms. She spoke 5 languages fluently: English, Igbo, Yoruba, Mandarin, and Korean. The Korean had been her mother's idea. Nigeria is doing more business with Asia every year, her mother had said when Vicky was 16. Learn their languages. Make yourself valuable. So she had. Spent her university years studying Korean language and culture at the University of Lagos, then did a semester abroad at Yonsei University in Seoul. She'd fallen in love with the country, the food, the music, the way tradition and modernity existed side by side. She'd walked along the Han River at sunset, eaten tteokbokki from street vendors, learned to navigate the subway system like a local. Korea had felt like a second home. And when she returned to Lagos, she'd brought that love with her, turning it into a career that made her parents proud and gave her purpose. But today, her Korean skills had just cost her everything. She'd been translating for a major deal between a Nigerian oil company and a Korean tech firm. Millions of dollars were on the line. The negotiations had been going on for 3 months, and Vicky had been there for every meeting, every conference call, every late-night document review. She was exhausted but excited. This was the biggest deal of her career. And somewhere in the final contract translation, she'd made an error. Not a huge one. Just a few misplaced clauses about intellectual property rights and revenue sharing. The kind of thing that would normally be caught in review and corrected with a simple amendment. But the Koreans had seen it as evidence of bad faith negotiating. They'd accused the Nigerian side of trying to cheat them, of deliberately mistranslating to gain advantage. The deal had exploded within hours. Her boss, Mr. Johnson, had called her into his office that afternoon. He was a kind man, usually with a salt and pepper beard and reading glasses he always wore on a chain around his neck. But today his face was hard. "Vicky, you're one of our best," he'd said, and she'd known immediately what was coming. The praise before the axe. "In 6 years, you've been flawless. But this mistake, it cost us the client. It cost us a significant fee. And more importantly, it's damaged our reputation with the Korean business community in Lagos. Mr. Johnson, please, I can fix this. Let me contact the Korean side, explain. The Korean representative has already left Nigeria. He's being recalled to Seoul. There's nothing to fix." He'd slid a folder across his desk. "I'm sorry, Vicky, but I have to let you go." Just like that. 6 years of perfect work, dozens of successful deals, countless late nights and early mornings, erased by one bad day, one small error, one moment of human imperfection. She'd packed her desk in silence while her colleagues pretended not to watch. Her best friend at work, Amaka, had hugged her at the door and whispered, "This isn't fair." You know that, right? But fair or not, it was done. Now Vicky stood outside the building at 6 p.m. on a Thursday evening, clutching a cardboard box of her belongings, framed photos of her family, her favorite coffee mug that said fluent in 5 languages that her sister had given her, the small Korean lucky cat figurine she'd bought in Seoul. The sky was darkening and fat raindrops were starting to fall. Perfect. Even the weather was conspiring against her. That's when she saw him. The Korean man, sobbing in the rain. He was sitting on the curb about 20 feet away, his expensive suit plastered to his body, his black hair dripping water into his eyes. He was speaking Korean, the words tumbling out in a desperate stream that Vicky's trained ear automatically started to translate. I'm such a failure. I've destroyed everything. Father will never forgive me. I can't go home like this. What am I going to do? Vicky's first instinct was to keep walking. She had her own disaster to deal with, her own career in ruins, her own family to face with the news that their successful daughter had just been fired. But something about the way he cried, so completely, utterly lost, made her stop. Maybe it was because she understood that feeling. Maybe it was because helping someone else felt easier than facing her own problems. Maybe it was just that she'd been raised to help people in need, and this man was clearly in need. She set down her box carefully against the building wall and walked over, the rain soaking through her navy blue blazer and white blouse. Excuse me, she said in Korean, her accent soul-polished despite the years away. Are you okay? He looked up, startled. His eyes were red and swollen, his face a mess of tears and rain. He was probably in his early 30s, handsome in that sharp, put-together way Korean businessmen often were. Strong jawline, high cheekbones, the kind of face that probably looked commanding in a boardroom. But right now, he just looked broken. You speak Korean? He asked, his voice hoarse and disbelieving. Yes. Are you hurt? Do you need me to call someone? He laughed, but it was bitter and broken, the laugh of a man who'd run out of options. Help? No one can help me. I've destroyed everything. My career, my reputation, my family's honor. Everything. The words hit Vicky harder than they should have. Because she'd been thinking the exact same things an hour ago. Come on, she said, making a decision she'd probably regret. She offered her hand. You can't sit in the rain. There's a cafe across the street. Let me buy you coffee. He stared at her hand like it was a foreign object. Why would you help me? You don't even know me. I could be dangerous. You're crying on a curb in Victoria Island in an expensive suit. You're not dangerous, you're heartbroken. And I know what that feels like. She kept her hand extended. Please. Just coffee. Then you can go back to being miserable if you want. He stared at her for what felt like a full minute. Then, slowly, he took her hand. His grip was cold and wet, but firm. She pulled him to his feet. I'm Vicky, she said. Vicky Okafor. Park Jinho. He bowed slightly, muscle memory kicking in despite his state. Thank you. You're very kind. I'm really not, Vicky said honestly. I'm having a terrible day myself. But misery loves company, right? Come on. The cafe was called Sweet Beans, a small place popular with the office workers in the area. It was warm and dry inside, filled with the smell of roasted coffee and fresh puff-puff. The owner, Mrs. Adeyemi, raised an eyebrow at Vicky and her soaking wet Korean companion, but said nothing, just handed them towels and took their order. Vicky ordered 2 coffees and 2 meat pies, comfort food. They found a quiet corner table away from the other customers, and Jinho sat dripping onto the wooden chair, looking lost. Here, Vicky said, pushing a towel and a coffee cup toward him. Dry off a bit. You'll catch cold. Thank you. He dried his face and hair mechanically, then wrapped his hands around the cup like it was a lifeline. I'm sorry. You're probably wondering why a grown man was crying in the street. Only if you want to tell me. Otherwise, we can just sit here and drink coffee. No judgment either way. Jinho looked at her, really looked at her for the first time. She was beautiful, he realized. Warm brown skin, natural hair pulled back in a neat bun, intelligent eyes that seemed to hold both kindness and weariness. She looked like someone who understood what it meant to carry heavy things. I came to Nigeria 3 months ago, he said finally, the words coming slowly at first, then faster. I worked for Hanjin Tech. We're a Korean technology company specializing in oil and gas exploration equipment. My company sent me here to finalize a partnership deal with a Nigerian oil company. A big deal. Maybe $50 million. Vicky's stomach dropped. She knew exactly where this was going, but she let him continue. It was supposed to be my big break, Jinho continued, his voice thick with emotion. I'm the youngest of 3 sons. My father was a CEO. My older brothers both run successful companies. I was supposed to prove that I could handle international business, that I was just as capable as them. Better, even, because I was willing to take risks, to go to challenging markets like Africa. He laughed bitterly. My family had doubts. They said Nigeria was too complicated, too risky. But I insisted. I said I could handle it. I said I'd make them proud. What happened? Vicky asked quietly, though she already knew. There was an error in the contract translation. The Nigerian side had hired a translator, and she made a mistake in the Korean version. Nothing huge, just some clauses about intellectual property and revenue sharing that were unclear. But my CEO in Seoul saw it and thought the Nigerians were trying to cheat us. He called me, furious, demanding to know why I'd let this happen. Jinho's hands shook around his coffee cup. I panicked. I was so desperate to save the deal, to prove I could fix it. So I told him I thought the error might have been intentional. That maybe the Nigerian side was trying to take advantage of us. I thought if I could position it as them being dishonest, he'd give me time to renegotiate, to fix the translation and move forward. But he didn't, Vicky said softly. He canceled the entire deal. Said if the Nigerians couldn't be trusted with a simple contract, we couldn't do business with them at all. And then he told me I'd mishandled the situation. That I'd damaged relationships that took years to build. That I was an embarrassment to the company and to the Park family name. Jinho's voice broke. He fired me. Right there on the phone. Told me to stay in Lagos until I could book a flight home because he didn't want to see my face in the Seoul office. Said everyone would know I'd failed, that I'd shamed the company. The rain hammered against the cafe windows. Inside, the air felt thick with shared misery. Vicky took a deep breath. Jinho, I need to tell you something. He looked up at her. I was the translator. The one who made the error. I'm the reason your deal fell apart. The color drained from his face. What? I worked for Johnson and Associates. We were representing Lagos Oil Group in the negotiations. I translated the contract. Her voice was steady, but her hands were shaking now. I made the mistake. And 3 hours ago, I was fired for it. That's why I was outside the building. That's why I'm sitting here with my career in ruins. They stared at each other across the small table, 2 strangers who destroyed each other's lives without even knowing it. I'm so sorry, Vicky said, tears burning in her eyes. I checked that contract a dozen times. I don't even know how I missed it. I was so careful, but I was tired and there were so many pages and... Stop, Jinho said. His voice wasn't angry, just empty. It wasn't your fault. The error was small. Any good faith negotiation would have caught it and fixed it with an amendment. That's standard practice in international business. He rubbed his face with both hands. I'm the one who made it worse. I could have told my CEO the truth, that it was a minor translation error that we could easily correct. But I panicked. I made it bigger than it was. I destroyed any chance of salvaging the deal because I was more worried about saving face than doing the right thing. So we're both unemployed because of the same mistake, Vicky said quietly. Yes. Jinho laughed, but this time it wasn't entirely bitter. There was something almost absurd about it. We've destroyed each other's careers and we've never even met before today. What are you going to do now? Vicky asked. Jinho was quiet for a long moment, staring into his coffee. I don't know. I can't go back to Korea. Not like this. My family will be so disappointed. My father will look at me with that look, the one that says I've confirmed every doubt he ever had about me. My brothers will be sympathetic, but secretly relieved that they're still the successful ones. He looked up at Vicky. What about you? I can't face my family either. My parents are so proud of me. My mother is a surgeon, my father is a professor, my younger sister is a lawyer. I'm the language girl, the one who is supposed to use her skills to build bridges between Nigeria and the world. And instead I just burned everything down. They sat in silence, two failures in a cafe, the rain continuing outside. Then Jinho said something that changed everything. "We should fix this." Vicky looked up. "Fix what?" "The deal. Bring it back. We know what went wrong. We know the contract inside and out. We know both sides' concerns. What if we could convince them to come back to the table?" Vicky shook her head. "They'll never listen to us. We're the ones who ruined it." "Exactly." Jinho leaned forward, and for the first time since she'd found him, there was something in his eyes besides despair. "Which means we're the most motivated people on earth to make it right. Think about it, Vicky. You speak both languages perfectly. You understand Nigerian business culture. I know Korean corporate structure inside and out. I know what it takes to satisfy a Seoul CEO. Together, we could be exactly what this deal needs, someone who can bridge the gap that caused the breakdown in the first place." "That's insane," Vicky said. But even as she said it, her mind was racing. "Both companies fired us. Why would they trust us? Because we have nothing left to lose. Because we can offer something they need, true cultural mediation, not just translation. We can anticipate problems before they happen because we've already seen how spectacularly things can go wrong." Vicky wanted to say no. Wanted to tell him it was hopeless, that they should just accept their failures and move on. But something in his eyes, that spark of hope, of possibility, made her pause. What else was she going to do? Go home and tell her parents she'd failed? Start job hunting in a city where everyone in the business community would know about her mistake within a week? Or take a chance on this crazy idea with a stranger she'd met crying in the rain? "Okay," she said finally. "Let's try. But we need a real plan. We can't just show up and ask them to trust us." Jinho smiled, a real smile this time, transforming his whole face. "I'm very good at plans. If you're loving this story so far, pause right here and hit that like button. It really helps the algorithm show this to more people. And if you haven't subscribed yet, what are you waiting for? We drop amazing stories like this every week. Drop a comment below. Would you team up with the person who accidentally ruined your career to fix things? I want to know what you think. Okay, let's see what Vicky and Jinho did next. This is where things get really interesting. The plan took shape over the next 3 hours. They stayed at Sweet Beans until Mrs. Adeyemi started giving them pointed looks and they realized they'd been nursing the same cold coffee for hours. So they moved to a different cafe down the street, then to a small restaurant where they ordered jollof rice and chicken while filling napkins with notes and diagrams. "First, we need to understand exactly why the deal fell apart beyond just the translation error," Jinho said, sketching on a napkin. There were underlying tensions even before that. The Nigerian side was worried about intellectual property protection, Vicky said, remembering the sidebar conversations she'd overheard during breaks. The oil exploration technology they're developing is proprietary. They were afraid Korean companies might steal it or reverse engineer it. And the Korean side has been burned before by African partnerships that fell apart due to corruption or legal complications, Jinho added. They think contracts here aren't enforced the same way as in Korea. There's a fundamental trust issue. So we need to address both concerns in a new proposal, with protections built in that satisfy everyone. They worked through the evening, stopping only when their phones buzzed with messages from worried family members. Vicky texted her mother that she was fine but needed space. Jinho ignored his phone entirely. "Tomorrow, we start reaching out," Jinho said as they finally prepared to leave around 10 p.m. "I'll contact people in the Korean business community here in Lagos. Quietly. Feel them out about the possibility of reviving the deal. And I'll reach out to my old contacts on the Nigerian side," Vicky said. "Some of them might still talk to me." They exchanged numbers and stood awkwardly on the street corner where they'd met hours earlier. The rain had stopped, leaving the city smelling clean and new. "Thank you," Jinho said. "For stopping. For listening. For giving me hope when I had none." "Thank you for giving me something to fight for," Vicky replied. "I'll see you tomorrow?" "Tomorrow. Same cafe? 9 a.m. I'll bring better coffee than Sweet Beans. I know a place." As Vicky walked to find a taxi, she looked back once to see Jinho standing under a streetlight, looking less broken than he had a few hours ago. She didn't know it yet, but she'd just met the man who would change her life forever. The next 6 weeks were a whirlwind of work, rejection, small victories, and slowly building hope. They met every day at the same cafe, a small place called The Grind that Vicky had discovered during her university days. It had good Wi-Fi, better coffee, and owners who didn't mind if you stayed all day as long as you kept ordering. Jinho would arrive at 9 a.m. sharp with his laptop and a growing list of Korean business contacts in Lagos. Vicky would come with her notes, her Nigerian insights, and a determination that surprised even herself. The Nigerian side is cautious, Vicky reported after a week of careful phone calls and coffee meetings with former colleagues. They feel burned too. But some of them are willing to listen if we can guarantee better oversight. The Korean community here is small and tight-knit, Jinho said. They've heard about what happened. Some won't talk to me. But I found 3 businessmen who think the deal still makes sense and would be willing to advocate to Seoul if we can present a solid new framework. They worked in perfect sync, finishing each other's thoughts, challenging each other's assumptions, pushing each other to think bigger and more creatively. And somewhere in those long days at the grind, something shifted between them. Vicky started noticing little things about Jinho. The way he unconsciously switched to Korean when he was frustrated, muttering at his laptop. How he always ordered his coffee too hot and then forgot about it until it was cold, requiring a reheat. The way his whole face changed when he smiled, which was happening more often now. How he always insisted on paying for lunch, saying it was Korean culture to treat, until Vicky made him agree to take turns. Jinho noticed things about Vicky too. Her laugh, which was loud and unself-conscious, and made everyone in the cafe turn and smile. The way she code-switched effortlessly between English and Igbo, depending on who she was calling, her whole voice and cadence changing. How passionate she got when talking about Nigerian culture and potential, her hands moving expressively, her eyes lighting up. "You really love this country," he said one afternoon as they took a break to walk around the block, both of them stiff from sitting too long. "Of course. It's home. It's complicated and frustrating and beautiful and mine." She looked at him curiously, shielding her eyes from the bright Lagos sun. "Do you love Korea that way?" Jinho was quiet for a moment, his hands in his pockets. "I used to. Before all this. Now I don't know if I'm Korean enough for Korea or international enough for anywhere else. I feel stuck in between." "I understand that," Vicky said softly. "I spent so much time learning about Korea and Chinese culture that sometimes Nigerians think I'm trying to be something I'm not. Like I'm rejecting my own culture or trying to be Asian." "Are you?" "No. I'm just expansive. I contain multitudes." She grinned, quoting one of her favorite poems. Walt Whitman. "We read him at university." "I know Whitman. We studied American poetry in Seoul too." Jinho stopped walking and turned to face her. "Maybe that's what we both are. Expansive. Too big for the boxes people want to put us in." Their eyes met and held. Something electric passed between them, something that made Vicky's breath catch. This was dangerous. She couldn't afford to catch feelings for her business partner, especially when everything was so uncertain and their entire futures hung in the balance. But her heart didn't care about logic. "We should get back," she said, breaking eye contact. "We have that call with Mr. Johnson's colleague in an hour." "Right. Yes." The call. But as they walked back to the cafe, their hands brushed once, twice, and neither of them pulled away. The breakthrough came in week 6. One of Vicky's former colleagues at Johnson and Associates, a senior associate named Tund who'd always respected her work, had quietly been watching their efforts. He believed in them, believed in the deal, and he convinced Mr. Johnson to take a meeting. "You have 15 minutes, Mr. Johnson said when Vicky and Jinho walked into his office on a Wednesday morning. "Convince me why Lagos Oil Group should consider reopening negotiations." Vicky's hands were sweating, but her voice was steady as she presented the Nigerian perspective, the additional protections they'd built in, the potential for long-term partnership, the economic benefits for both countries, the oversight mechanisms that would prevent misunderstandings. Jinho presented the Korean side, the technology transfer opportunities, the investment potential, the goodwill that successful Afro-Asian partnerships could generate, the reputation benefits for both companies. Together, They presented their bridge, a new consulting firm they wanted to create, specializing in Afro-Asian business relations. They would oversee the deal, handling not just translation but cultural mediation, contract negotiation, and ongoing support. They would be personally accountable for success or failure. "We broke this deal," Vicky said firmly, looking Mr. Johnson in the eye. "Let us fix it. No one has more incentive to make this work than we do." Mr. Johnson studied them for a long moment. His reading glasses reflected the light from the window, making his expression hard to read. "You're asking me to risk my reputation, my firm's reputation, on two people I fired 6 weeks ago." "Yes," Jinho said. "Because we've learned from our mistakes. Because we've spent 6 weeks building relationships with both sides. Because our entire futures depend on this succeeding. And because you know, deep down, that this deal makes sense for everyone." Another long silence. Vicky could hear her own heartbeat. Then Mr. Johnson picked up his phone. "Let me make some calls. Wait outside." They waited in the lobby for 90 minutes. Vicky paced. Jinho sat perfectly still, his face unreadable. Neither of them spoke. There was nothing to say. Everything depended on what happened behind that closed door. Finally, Mr. Johnson's assistant called them back in. "Lagos Oil Group is willing to consider reopening negotiations," Mr. Johnson said. "On 2 conditions. 1. You handle all cultural mediation and translation personally. 2. You get the Koreans to come back to the table. If you can deliver Hanjin Tech, we'll give this another chance." Vicky felt like she couldn't breathe. "Thank you. Thank you so much, Mr. Johnson." "Don't thank me yet. Now comes the hard part. Getting Seoul to say yes." Getting Seoul to say yes took another month. Jinho made dozens of calls to Korea, navigating time zones and corporate hierarchies. He worked his contacts, called in favors, and finally got through to his former CEO's deputy, a man named Kim who'd always respected Jinho's work ethic. "The Nigerians have agreed to stronger intellectual property protections," Jinho explained on a video call, Vicky sitting beside him to show the united front. "We've built in oversight mechanisms. We have third-party arbitration clauses. Everything your CEO was concerned about has been addressed." "And you trust this?" Kim asked, skeptical. "After what happened?" "I trust that we've learned from our mistakes," Jinho said. "Both sides have. This deal is worth $60 million now. We've expanded the scope." "It's good business, Kim. You know it is." There was a long pause. Then Kim said, "I'll present it to the CEO." No promises. 2 weeks later, they got the call. Hanjin Tech would return to the table. 3 months after Vicky found Jinho crying in the rain, Lagos Oil Group and Hanjin Tech signed a revised contract worth $60 million, more than the original deal. The signing ceremony was held at a nice hotel in Victoria Island. Vicky wore a traditional Nigerian Ankara dress in bright blue and gold. Jinho wore a suit with a Korean-style tie that Vicky had helped him pick out. They stood together as the executives from both companies shook hands and smiled for photographers. Vicky and Jinho's new consulting firm, Bridge International, had facilitated the entire negotiation. They'd done it. Against every odd, they'd succeeded. That evening, after all the handshakes and congratulations and business cards exchanged, Vicky and Jinho went back to the grind. Their cafe. Their place. "We did it," Vicky said, still not quite believing it. "We did," Jinho agreed. He ordered their usual, 2 hot coffee for him, perfectly warm for her. "So what now?" "Now we build Bridge International into something real. We take on more clients. We prove this wasn't just luck." "I meant us, Vicky." Her heart stopped. "Us." Jinho set down his coffee cup and took her hand across the table. "I've been falling for you for weeks. Maybe since the first day, if I'm honest. The way you took a chance on a crying stranger. The way you fight for what you believe in. The way you see possibilities where others see walls." "Jinho, I know it's complicated," he said quickly. "You're Nigerian, I'm Korean. I'm supposed to go back to Seoul eventually, though honestly I don't want to anymore. You're building a life here. My family has expectations. Your family probably does too. But Vicky, I've never felt this way about anyone." Vicky's eyes filled with tears. She'd been fighting this feeling for weeks, telling herself it was just partnership, just gratitude, just circumstance. But it wasn't. It was love. "My family won't understand," she said quietly. "Nigerian parents have certain expectations. My mother already has Nigerian men she wants me to meet. And Korean parents. I know about Korean family culture. Your parents probably expect you to marry a nice Korean girl from a good family. I don't want a nice Korean girl. I want you. The woman who saved me when I'd lost everything. Who built something impossible with me. Who makes me want to be better than I am. It won't be easy. Nothing worth having ever is." Jinho squeezed her hand. "I'm not asking you to figure out the next 10 years right now. I'm just asking, can we try? Can we see where this goes?" Vicky thought about all the reasons to say no. The cultural differences. The family pressure. The business complications of mixing personal and professional. The fact that loving someone from a completely different world came with challenges she couldn't even imagine yet. But then she thought about that day in the rain. How this strange, broken man had become her partner, her friend, her person. How they'd built something impossible together. How he looked at her like she was the answer to questions he hadn't known he was asking. "Yes," she said, squeezing his hand back. "Let's try." Jinho's smile was brighter than the Lagos sun. "Yes. Yes, you impossible man. Let's see where this goes." He stood up, pulling her up with him, and kissed her right there in the grind while the other customers pretended not to watch, and Mrs. Adeyemi, the owner, smiled knowingly. It tasted like coffee and hope and the beginning of something extraordinary. 1 year later, Vicky stood in the ballroom of the Eco Hotel, adjusting her geli, the traditional Nigerian head wrap her mother had tied for her that morning with surprisingly gentle hands. Beside her, Jinho wore both a traditional Korean hanbok and a Nigerian agbada, a fusion of cultures that had become their signature style. Bridge International was hosting their first annual Afro-Asian Business Summit. Over 200 attendees from 15 countries filled the room. Their small consulting firm had grown beyond anything they'd imagined. 5 employees now, offices in both Lagos and Seoul, clients across 3 continents. "Nervous?" Jinho asked, taking her hand. They wore matching rings now, not engagement rings yet, but promise rings they'd chosen together, simple bands that represented their commitment. "Terrified," Vicky admitted. "What if my speech is terrible?" "Impossible. You're the most brilliant woman I know." He kissed her forehead. "And even if everyone else leaves, I'll still be here. Like that first day at the grind." "That's sweet, but I really want everyone to stay." "They will. They always do when you're involved." He was right. The ballroom was packed. Nigerian entrepreneurs sat next to Korean investors. Chinese manufacturers networked with Ghanaian tech startups. South African mining companies talked with Japanese logistics firms. All there because 2 people had refused to let one mistake define them. As Vicky stepped up to the microphone to give her opening remarks, she looked out at the crowd and then back at Jinho, standing in the wings with that proud smile she loved more than anything. "A year ago," she began, her voice carrying clearly through the room, "I made the worst mistake of my professional life. A translation error that cost me my job, damaged my reputation, and nearly destroyed a $50 million deal between Nigeria and Korea." The room was completely silent, everyone leaning forward. "And on the same day, I met the best thing that ever happened to me." She found Jinho's eyes and smiled. "Today, I want to talk about failure. About second chances. About building bridges where people only saw walls. About the fact that sometimes our biggest disasters become our greatest opportunities if we're brave enough to see them that way." The applause started before she even finished her opening. And it continued throughout her speech as she talked about cultural intelligence, about the importance of real understanding versus simple translation, about the future of Afro-Asian partnerships. After the speech, after the networking and the photos and the business cards exchanged and the new potential clients met, Vicky and Jinho finally had a moment alone on the hotel balcony overlooking Lagos at sunset. "My parents want to meet your parents," Jinho said casually, looking out at the city. Vicky nearly choked on her wine. "What? When did this happen?" Last week. I finally told them everything. About what happened, about Bridge International, about you. And my mother said she wants to meet the woman who changed her son's life. Jinho, we've only been together a year. Vicky. He turned to face her, suddenly serious. I know it's fast. I know our families will make this complicated. I know we'll have to figure out where we'll live permanently, what language we'll speak at home, how we'll raise our hypothetical children, all of that. Then why bring up meeting parents now? Because I've spent a year working beside you, loving you, building dreams with you. And I don't want to wait anymore. I don't want to be cautious or practical or careful about us. He pulled a small box from his pocket. Vicky's breath caught. Jinho. Wait. Before you say anything, just know, this isn't a proposal. Not yet. Because I want to do that properly, with both our families involved, the way our cultures demand. He opened the box. Inside was a delicate necklace with 2 interlocking pendants, one shaped like Nigeria, one like Korea. But this is a promise. That I'm choosing you. That I'm choosing us. That I'm ready to do the hard work of bringing our families together, of building a life that honors both our worlds. Will you choose me back? Vicky's eyes filled with tears as he fastened the necklace around her neck. The pendants rested right over her heart. Yes, she said, laughing through tears. You ridiculous, wonderful man. Yes, I choose you. I choose us. I choose this beautiful, complicated, impossible life we're building. When he kissed her, the Lagos sunset painted the sky in shades of gold and orange, the same colors as the Ankara dress she wore, the same colors as the future they were creating together. I love you, Vicky Okafor, he whispered against her lips. I love you too, Park Jinho. My impossible Korean man who I found crying in the rain. Your impossible Korean man, he agreed. Always. Below them, Lagos pulsed with life and noise and endless possibility. Above them, the stars were beginning to appear, shining the same way they did over Seoul. And between them was a love that proved some bridges were worth building, no matter how impossible they seemed at first. So there you have it, the story of how a translator's mistake became the beginning of something extraordinary. If this story moved you, if it made you believe in second chances and cross-cultural love, I need you to do 3 things right now. Smash that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss stories like this. We drop new content every day and trust me, you don't want to miss what's coming next. Hit that like button, it really helps this story reach more people who need to hear it. Drop a comment below telling me, would you give someone a second chance who accidentally ruined your career? Have you ever turned a disaster into an opportunity? Where are you watching from and what time is it where you are? I love reading your comments and connecting with you all from around the world. Remember, your worst day might just be the beginning of your best life. Keep taking chances on impossible things. And keep believing that love can cross any border, any culture, any obstacle, if you're willing to fight for it. I'll see you in the next story.